Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of College Football Under Review, a show made by a football fan for football fans everywhere. Today is August 17th, 2025, and what does that mean? It means we are 1 week away from the beginning of college football beginning in Dublin, Ireland next week, Farmageddon. It's going to be a great game, but we're not going to be talking about that today. What we're going to be talking about today is the last three teams that we have for our deep dives, but these are more analysis as it's not a conference. Technically, the Pac-12, we're going over those two teams. They're technically still a conference, technically not, but they don't reach that 8-team threshold that for the NCAA to recognize them as a full conference. So I'm putting them in this independent category, and we aren't going to predict that conference as they're not a fully sanctioned conference by the NCAA. Now, outside of the three-team analysis, we've got the predictions for 2025 season. We're going over Heisman. We're going over top 25. We're going over Coach of the Year, and we are going over what we have as our top 25 going into the season as well. So we've got a lot to cover, and let's take all that under review. Now, we go into our independent team previews, and the first team we're going to talk about is Oregon State. Oregon State, during the offseason, went out and got Duke quarterback Malik Murphy, who had an impressive yet turnover-prone season back east at Duke. However, he will have a pair of strong wide receiver weapons within Trent Walker and Darius Clemens, both entering their senior year, combining for over 1,000 receiving yards in 2024. As the question here for the offense, like the majority of other teams, is how will the offensive line fare with 4 starters leaving? Last season, the team's total defense ranked 98th nationally, and because of this, head coach Trent Bray has taken more of an interest with the development this offseason in his defense. The defense has a strong safety core and edge rushers who need to produce more on pressuring the QB this season. Their outlook for their schedule and season is very favorable and allows them to easily make it to a bowl game. If they want a shot at the playoff, they need to have one dominant and kind of miraculous undefeated season, in my opinion. And the other team in the Pac-12 is Washington State. Washington State is interesting and has provided us with a new glimpse into how the transfer portal and coaches from the FCS level are going to transition into the FBS level. And I'm saying this because they went out and hired FCS Montana State's head coach, Jimmy Rogers. Now, what this means is that the culture, player, and style of football are all coming with him from that program. This means that the offense, for starters, is going to transition to a run-heavy tendency for play calls instead of the air raid, which Mike Leach instilled up there. Both coordinators are from the FCS level, with his offensive coordinator coming with him and him picking up the defensive coordinator from South Dakota State University. The majority of the roster turnover is filled with his top players from the 2024 Montana State team he had last season, who may struggle immensely moving from FCS to FBS. This adds insight, too, of how we will see these teams navigate dramatic roster transitions even more with the transfer portal and NIL. The schedule has difficult games such as Washington, Ole Miss, and Virginia, and a bowl game might be in reach if they are able to handle the transition. If not the team, but I think the program of the culture will be more of a positive, but I think it's going to be a tough transition for them in the FCS level. If not, then all credit to him and head coach Jimmy Rogers, and he may be one of the hot up-and-coming coaches. And then we have the last independent team who cannot forget Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Notre Dame came off one of the best seasons that they have had as a program in a long time, thanks to the rise of Marcus Freeman, who finally has brought stability to a prestigious program that should be a top dog in this new NIL realm with the name that Notre Dame is synonymous with college football. They're going to be looking for their freshman quarterback, CJ Carr, to lead this offense after Riley Leonard graduated. The good news is that the run game will be effective, and the highlight of this kind of offense that Marcus Freeman likes. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price had over 1,800 yards rushing and 24 rushing touchdowns combined between the two of them. The defense will continue to look dominant with just how much depth they have on the roster. And this is a great sigh of relief for their new defensive coordinator, Chris Ash. The schedule is going to be difficult in the first half and kind of taper off as the season goes along to allow Notre Dame a schedule that lets them get right into another playoff with just enough time for recovery if one of their players are injured and they're needed, as the second half of their schedule is against weaker opponents that they should win. And with Marcus Freeman as the head coach for Notre Dame and the 12-team playoff existing, I think that there's no reason that Notre Dame is going to always be set up in a favorable position to make the playoffs year after year. And as we'll see later, Notre Dame is going to be brought up quite a lot in this episode. Now, that is all out of the way. That is the final analysis for all the college football teams going into this season. And now that we have completed the conference, the team previews, let's get into our predictions for the 2025 college football season. So I think the first one that we're going to go over, which I had a lot of fun thinking about and was pretty difficult, is the Heisman predictions for us this season. So at number 5, I have quarterback Dante Moore from Oregon. I think he is going to be a key player in Dan Lanning's high-powered offense, and he's going to have so many great players around him. He is a sophomore coming in to the season after sitting a year behind Dylan Gabriel. They say that he kind of has a very good grasp on the offensive scheme that they have there. So I'm really looking to him to have this kind of breakout year. I think he's going to be one of these first-year quarterback starters that really just lights the page and lights the college football world by storm. I guess not light it by storm, but light it on fire. That was kind of more what I was going for. But I think that even if he is, kind of coming onto the scene and being really strong, I think that running back Mekhi Hughes, who they got in the transfer portal, is going to kind of take away from his stat ceiling, and they are going to kind of have a more balanced offense because they got him in the portal, and he's such a strong player. I just think that Dante Moore, he's going to be this great young player, but his ceiling isn't as high because of the weapons, the running back Mekhi Hughes with him, and they're going to have a more balanced offense because they don't want to put all the pressure on him because he's so young. And at 4 is one of the skill positions that a lot of people have favorited as a top 5 or top 6 Heisman pick, and that's Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State. Julian Sayin is the quarterback for the Buckeyes this season, and he kind of hasn't proven anything, but I think Jeremiah Smith is going to be one of his favorite targets and heavily part of the offensive attack this season. And he's going to be a safety net for him in making miraculous catches for Julian Sayin. He will obviously be in contention just because of how many times they are going to target him in this offense. And he's going to be relied upon, the new offensive coordinator, so much in trying to create production and offensive yards during this season. The defenses, though, are most likely going to have him circled in game plans week to week, and the Big Ten does have some really stout defenses. So I wouldn't be shocked if kind of when they play these better defenses like Iowa, they are able to lock him down and truly not get him to the stats that he needs to be a standout wide receiver that wins the Heisman, kind of like DeVonta Smith. DeVonta Smith was a crazy wide receiver. He did amazing, and that's why he ultimately won the Heisman, is because they had Mac Jones. He was a great quarterback, but DeVonta Smith was just electric on the field. And I just think that Jeremiah Smith is going to almost get there, but the Julian Sayin and the fact that defenses are going to have so much put on him, I just don't think he's going to break through for the Heisman this season. And then at 3 is another skill position, Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame. Now that Riley Leonard is gone, I think that Jeremiah Love is going to be looked at as the face and star player, not only on the offense, but as the team as a whole. And they are going to utilize him so much in their kind of game management style of play. We can't lie. Marcus Freeman loves the run. He's more of a defensive guy, and he knows that establishing the run is so crucial in so many of these games, especially when you get to the playoffs and you have these big defensive linemen that are staring right at you. And like I said, he's going to be the main force in this entire rushing heavy attack. And the only reason he is going to, in my opinion, beat out Jeremiah Smith higher in the rankings in the skill position and skill player is because he's going to have so much more time holding the ball, so many more rushing attempts, and just opportunities to get more yards than him, because he's not relying on a quarterback to throw to him. He is getting the rock and going to be running it. And I think he is just better. He has shown more, in my opinion. And then at 2, it's Cade Klubnik at Clemson, the quarterback. He is maybe one of the, if not the premier players in the ACC as a whole, and will also be a key player on the Clemson team to win games down the stretch. I think his rushing ability combined with scrambling in the backfield and making opportunities where there shouldn't be, and how he is able to calm himself on maybe broken plays and make them into a positive, sets him apart from a lot of the other quarterbacks in this conference. I know Carson Beck I think Carson Beck will come back, but I think that Cade Klubnik is going to be more of this just game-changing player. He's a kind of quarterback that will put his shoulder down and not afraid to freaking hit defenders. And that's pretty rare, I think, with a lot of dual threat quarterbacks getting in here. But I mean, Cade Klubnik, he's willing to fight for those yards in the field. And if he can increase his passing yards from the previous season while maintaining what he can do rushing the ball, I think he could possibly win it. But there's one thing, one person, and one media frenzy that is going to support my number 1 pick and my pick to win the Heisman this year. And you're all probably looking and going, oh, of course, everyone's going to put it. It's just a textbook answer. Well, yes, it is a textbook answer, but it's the textbook answer that I think everyone is expecting. And that's quarterback Arch Manning from Texas. And I'm just going to say this and why I have him up here. At the end of the day, the Heisman Trophy has become a PR campaign combined with that star player on the field. And Arch is going to be under center for one of the most dominant teams in this season that is only going to help him achieve the Heisman if he can be above average. What does above average mean? If he leads them to an SEC championship and wins the SEC championship with maybe one loss, he will probably win the Heisman based on his name and the program that is behind him helping. I think his stats are going to be above average. They're going to be really good, and people are going to say, oh, it's in between 2 quarterbacks again, because I think it's going to be a quarterback Heisman this season. after last year. Everyone's tired of these skill position players and the defensive player. They're going to go back to their quarterback Heisman. And I just think Arch has the players, the name, the image and likeness, and he will be able to talk to the press in a smart way and clever way that the only thing that has to help him and secure them the Heisman is an above average stat season. Limit turnovers, go with checkdowns, let your star wide receivers take it down and score touchdowns, let them make the big plays. He is also probably one of the first Mannings that we can actually see run the freaking ball, and that's pretty deadly. I think he's all that in a bag of chips, and he's going to continue to be that. Maybe not live up as the highest ceiling that we're going to expect him to be in, but he's still going to have a pretty high ceiling, especially with the team around him. And that is my prediction to win the Heisman this year. Now, next is Coach of the Year. The Coach of the Year, in my kind of way of going about this and looking at it, I like to think of Coach of the Year as someone who exceeds expectations. And this award is the Bobby Dodd Head Coach of the Year award. I think it's someone who exceeds expectations, has a good team around them, and can perform at a high level against high level opponents. And he's going to shock the world just a little bit. And that head coach is... Now, before I say who it is, I had this probably took me the longest out of anyone, but I'm riding high on this coach. I'm riding high on this team based on how many players are returning, the leadership it has, and the head coach who has finally brought stability to a program that's going to have continued success, in my opinion. And that is none other than Bret Bielema at Illinois. I think that with their schedule, they're going to go about 10-2 in the regular season, maybe 10-1, but I'm being kind of realistic and kind of what they have to do. I think they can go 11-1, but I think that they have potential losses to Ohio State on their schedule, and their other two hardest opponents is kind of Washington or Duke. And I think that they have to win at least one of these games to make the playoffs. If they can beat both of them, wow, then that's great. They are going to make the playoff. But the standout player for his team is obviously going to be quarterback Luke Altmaier. The team and the program team and the university's students love this guy, and there's no reason that they shouldn't. He announced that he was going to return during an Illinois basketball game, and the place went crazy. This guy is a leader. He is a veteran quarterback, and he is someone that knows how to manage the game and be a field general on the field. He didn't have the craziest stats last season, but I think that they are just going to have continued success with him, and he can only get better for this season. Now, the biggest success factor I have for them achieving this lofty goal is their wide receiver room full of transfers need to develop and mesh together with Luke Altmaier. If they can do that combined with keeping up the physicality on defense, there's no reason that they shouldn't have both a great defense and offense to complement Bret Bielema and the stability that he has brought to the Fighting Illini. The potential Big Ten title match is possibly one of the results I see if he has one loss, though I don't think it will happen. I think he's going to lose it to Ohio State, and Ohio State is going to play Penn State, and because of that loss to Ohio State, they are just not going to get into the Big Ten title game, but they're going to act as this Indiana team that Indiana was last season, and they are going to sneak into the playoffs kind of late round. And I think them not playing in the Big Ten title match is going to help them and get them into the playoffs. This team overall is returning 16 players. That's very huge for just kind of the world we live in college football, with how much player turnover there is and how difficult it can be to keep your star players on there. And I think with this amount of players returning, they are only going to evolve from how they played last season. And I think one of the biggest factors about one of these returners is, then again, quarterback Luke Altmaier. I think he is overall underrated and a strong leader in the locker room that is going to be able to keep this team composed if they're down at half, maybe by 3 or touchdown, maybe even 10. I think he's going to be able to be this glue guy and keep the locker room intact. And every time they come back from halftime, they're going to be stronger and have a better game plan than the first half if they don't look as strong. Now, their season is really one of the big factors why I have them doing so well and Brett Bielema winning Coach of the Year. All the teams that they lost to last season aren't on their schedule this season, and that includes teams Penn State, Oregon, and Minnesota. They're nowhere to be found on this schedule, and that just gives me more confidence that they are going to do better than last season. Ohio State is their only AP preseason top 25 opponent on their schedule, which is huge for them. And they may have Indiana on there, which they are, but their schedule looks favorable, and the team should do well. Coach of the Year, Brett Bielema. Don't bet on him just because I think it's a long shot, but I believe in this long shot, and I think that he will be able to do it. So after head coach or Coach of the Year, Bobby Dodd Award, we're going to just recap our conference champions. And in the ACC, we've got Clemson winning that conference. They're going to beat Miami. Yes, I've changed my mind. I don't think Georgia Tech's going to make it. Kind of looking back at this Miami roster and Carson Beck, I think that Miami is going to give a big fight and make the ACC title match. But Clemson is ultimately going to beat them. I think they are a more sound team, and I like Dabo Swinney over Mario Crystal. Drop the ball any day of the week, anytime, any place, no matter what. And so Clemson's going to be our ACC conference champs. Next, the American Athletic Conference. I've changed my mind on this one too. You know who I got going to win in that conference? Tulane, because they got Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback from BYU who had to leave because he was having a little too much fun, and the Mormons made him sign a honor code that made him skip town. And so where did he go? He went somewhere that is going to perfectly fit his lifestyle now, and that's Tulane, if you catch my drift. Now, Tulane is going to be right outside the rankings. They might sneak into the playoffs. I just don't know. But next, the Big Ten, we've got Penn State winning that conference. They're going to go up against Ohio State. And I think this year they're actually going to beat them. But I think all the magic is going to run out with whenever they get to the playoffs. Maybe, maybe not. But I think they actually will win the Big Ten this season. And then the Big 12, I kind of like Arizona State winning it again just because Kenny Dillingham is such a great coach. I really like what he has done, and wherever he goes, he has continued success. Sam Leavitt, their quarterback, is going to be a dangerous player. I personally have him kind of 7th in outside of the Heisman. He just has to do a lot more. And even though they lost Cam Scatterbo, I still think that Kenny Dillingham, as a past as an offensive coordinator, is going to still have a potent offense that leads them to another Big 12 championship. And then Conference USA, we've got Liberty. They are just the strongest team in there recruiting talent-wise. There's nothing really stopping them in this conference, and I think that they will win this very handily. So Conference USA, we've got Liberty. In the MAC, the MACtion, I've got Toledo kind of the same way. They're kind of the best team in there. They've done the best recruiting, and the other teams aren't doing that well. I liked how they beat Mississippi State last season. I think that they're only going to be better this season than they were last, and that's why I think they're going to win the MAC. Now, the Mountain West is very interesting. Boise State won it just last year, but they played UNLV in that title match, and it was a close one. I think this year with Dan Mullen, I freaking like Dan Mullen as a coach. I think he holds respect among the players and his coaching staff, and I think he has the experience as a head coach to have success wherever he goes. And I think UNLV is a perfect fit for him, and he's very hungry to be coaching again. And I think that he's going to bring this Power 4 mentality to this Group of 5 school that is going to make them leaps and bounds better than what they were last season. And they're going to win the Mountain West Conference by doing so. And then the Sun Belt Conference, we've got James Madison University. I think that they are the best team in the Sun Belt Conference, hands down. There's nothing else to say. They are just going to dominate the conference this whole season. And then the SEC, our last conference, I believe Texas is going to break through and win the SEC conference this season against Georgia. Nope, scratch that. LSU. I think LSU will be playing them. Sorry, I misspoke. But Texas is ultimately going to make Brian Kelly look like a fool. And in the case that he thought he had a chance to win the SEC this season. Now, that is going to wrap up our kind of conference predictions and just recap, because we did switch up the American Conference winner, and I think that was the only one we switched up. Yeah. The American Conference, we've got Tulane instead of, I believe I had Memphis or Army or Navy winning that game, but it's Tulane now because I think Jake Retzlaff is just, he's a dog. He's a dog. That's it. And now that we have kind of our landscape of the best coach, in my coach of the year, the Heisman, and the conference champions, I'm going to give our top 25 coming into the season. And this isn't the AP. This isn't the Coaches Poll. This is the Nick Watts poll. This is the under review poll. And just don't be mad that if you don't like where your team is, because we're not biased. We're just real. So I'm going to go through these teams. Number one, ultimately, Texas. They've got Arch. They've got Steve Sarkisian. They've got players and NIL everywhere. There's no reason that they shouldn't be number one going into the season. I think them going in as number one puts the biggest target on their back. And it is, the statistics show that number one teams in the preseason don't win the national championship unless you are Alabama, who did it once. That's it. It's a very lofty goal, but I think it's one of these teams that have a rare opportunity to make this goal and break the statistics. And then two, Penn State. It's so weird that Penn State's ranked number two because they have so many players returning. James Franklin has gone out, gotten a better defensive coordinator, and they are putting all their chips on the table. They're this program that kind of has a chance every 4 years, and this is one of those every 4 years. If they don't win the national championship this year, then I don't think James Franklin may ever win it at Penn State. And I have them at 2 just because I think that they are one of the more veteran teams as well, up there with Texas. And then 3, I have Clemson. I love Cade Klubnik. I love all the players that they're bringing back. Dabo Swinney is one of the more underrated coaches now, which is weird in my opinion, just because he's kind of shifted away, but now he's shifting back, and he kind of put all his chips in, not this year, but the past couple of years, in how he has recruiting and been developing talent. But I think that the he's one of these coaches that develop players so well. He's developed his last couple of classes to be this dominant team, and that's why I have them at 3. And a lot of these teams I have kind of included, if you can't already tell, the coach, because I think that the coach is the brain of this team, and he has to use his brain combined with his body, his players, to perform well. And I think that these coaches are kind of going into my criteria for ranking them, because you always had Alabama up there because you knew Nick Saban was going to give you a dominant team, just like I think Dabo is going to give us a dominant team and win the ACC again. And then 4, we have Georgia. Georgia is going to have Gunnar Stockton. I think he's better than Carson Beck in the sense that he has the same talent and skill as Carson Beck, but he's able to control that locker room and seems to be more of a team player and a player that these guys want to rally behind. And because of that, I think that's going to make Georgia very threatening to anyone, especially opposing defenses. And Georgia's defense is still going to be dominant as ever. So I'm not worried about their defense falling off. They've got so much talent and depth on there. And Kirby Smart is a defensive genius. And then 5, Notre Dame. Their rushing style attack combined with their strong defense as well is going to earn them praise once again this season for having another great year. It's going to be another walk into the playoffs, in my opinion. But I mean, it's Notre Dame. This 12-team playoff was built for them, just like Penn State. And then after Notre Dame, 6, Ohio State. This team has lost so many starting players from last season, and especially on the defense, and they lost both their coordinators. They have a lot more questions than answers to those questions this season, and I have them up here just based on the depth chart and how many 5-star recruits and blue chip talent that they have on the team. I think that the only way they can go, though, is below a 6, but I have them up here just because I want to respect Ryan Day, and the Ohio State University is, because of the name, it's going to continue to have blue chip players that surround that team. And then 7 is LSU. LSU is one of the, oddly enough, kind of the 3rd best team in the SEC. I'm just going to go flat out and say that. They are returning a slew of players that should mesh well together and play for the same thing that they all want, a playoff berth. And I think they have the opportunity to get this. This is Brian Kelly's best team at LSU that he has been able to produce. And they're going to finally do something this season. And we'll get later in the playoff predictions on how I think they will do. And then 8 is Miami. Carson Beck, he's coming off that injury, and I think that week 1 against Notre Dame, we're really going to see how that injury has affected him, whether it hasn't affected him at all, or if he's not able to throw it as far as he typically can. But Miami has brought in another huge recruit portal class for Mario Cristobal, and this year I think that they're finally going to have them kind of all click, and they're going to be deadly if Carson Beck can limit the turnovers from last season. And then 9 is Alabama. Roll Tide. And I have Alabama up here because so many players are returning that are not as many as some of these other programs, but the ones that are returning are NFL caliber talent and easily could have gone to the draft last season, but decided to stay. And Kalen DeBoer is going to have a high-powered offense with people like Ryan Williams. And Ty Simpson, they have finally named as the starting quarterback. This is his job to lose. And even if he loses the job, I think that they still have good quarterback options behind them, like Austin Mack and Keon Russell, 5-star quarterback, who's a freshman. But I think Austin Mack, who transferred from Washington to Alabama, is going to be hungry and ready to step in if Ty Simpson doesn't live up to the expectations that the team has for him. So my 10th team in this top 10 is Illinois. I think Illinois is a sleeper team this season, as I've mentioned, with Coach of the Year, and they're going to achieve more than people should expect them to this season based on their veteran players returning and the stability the program has now thanks to Brett Bielema. And so kind of this top 10, 1 through 9 especially, sees about the same teams you would expect in almost any other poll you can find, either being media personalities, AP, or coaches poll. I just have these shifted around a little differently to my liking and my expectations that these coaches should be able to produce, and Illinois breaking in that top 10. But as we jump right out, we've got 11, Oregon. Oregon is not going to be in a rebuild year, but a reload year. I think that they're going to be just outside the top 10 because this reload is going to give their players, younger players, lots of experience to be dominant next season. I don't think they're going to be quite there, even though they have this expectation of making the playoffs now year in and year out. Then 12 is Arizona State. I think they are going to win the Big 12, and that warrants them to be up this high, in my opinion. Because I think they're going to win the Big 12, any of those teams can beat anyone. They are a hodgepodge of not dominant teams, but very competitive teams where week in and week out, it's going to be a battle. And I think Arizona State winning that battle deserves respect for number 12. Number 13 is Indiana. I think with their season, they are going to be good enough and win enough in games that they should. And because of that, I'm going to have them at 13. Not quite as good as they were last season, but I think with how their season is going to shake out, they're going to be well equipped to handle everything. And then 14, Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin. He has a 19-year-old quarterback in Simmons, and we saw how good he could be, but we just don't know what this team is going to look like after losing one of the highest, I think the highest scoring defense in the nation last season. And then 15, Louisville. I've got Louisville at 15 outside of Ole Miss because I really like, Miller Moss. I think Miller Moss is going to be fun at Louisville. They're going to be high-powered, so I've got him at 15. 16, Kansas State. This team is one of the favorites to win the Big 12, but I think they're going to be just outside of it. To 17, Texas A&M. They are going to be a good team with Marcel Reed, and they have only bolstered their defense and their offensive line as well. So I look them to be a very dominant top 20 team. And then 18 is Michigan. They have Bryce Underwood, but with Sharon Moore being suspended a lot, I don't know how this team is going to do. If Bryce Underwood can be a leader, I think this is going to be a surprising year for Michigan if he can show up in those first 4 weeks and be a leader on the field while Sharon Moore is sitting somewhere else in suspension. And then right outside of Michigan, I've got Missouri. I love Eli Drinkowitz, and I think the culture and class that he brings, especially with his offensive play style, is going to have Missouri in the top as a top 20 team and may surprise people and probably have a kind of, I think, mid to late season, we're going to have this discussion of, is Missouri going to make the playoffs? They kind of have the ability to. I don't think they will. I think they're going to kind of fall apart at the end of the season, but I still think that they are going to be a dominant team. They are kind of on a reload year as well. Then right outside of them, I have Florida. And I have Florida out here because I know that DJ Lagway is going to be a strong player for this season, but Billy Napier, I can't trust him and what he's going to do. 21 is Iowa State. They've got Rocco Becht, and they've got a defense that is returning a lot of players, but they had a lot of injuries last season, so I don't know how those injuries are going to translate into this season. And then 22 is Nebraska, Matt Rule, the Rule year. He's going to do great, but I was a little high on him, and I've kind of looked at everything again, and I just don't believe in this team as much, but I do believe that he's going to elevate them again this season for the third-year Rule. And then 23, South Carolina. Shane Beamer has said that there's not a lot of drop off with this team. I think there is a lot of drop off on the defense, but the offense is still going to be high powered enough to give them a top 25 look. And 24, a little shocking, but Georgia Tech. I have Georgia Tech up here because I think they are one of the most solid teams all around in offense, defense, and in their gameplay and their coaching. I just think this is a program that is all around a top 25 team and deserves to be in the top 25 because of how well they put everything together. Even though they may not have the best players right now, I think Brent Key will slowly be able to build that roster over the next 2 years and get more blue chip talent. And I think this year is another step in them showing the world, hey, we are on the rise. And that's why I have them at 24. And then the last team in the top 25, UNLV, putting them in here because they are going to win the Mountain West, and they are going to be the best group of 5 team, in my opinion, with Dan Mullen leading the charge. And so this wraps up my top 25 going into the season. And based on how I would rank the teams going into the season was on my own research. And I believe that these coaches are a major factor in ranking, and it's up to the players and the game plan they implement to win and either move up or down in the way I have. Now, I think the next time I will give my top 25 is after week 4, after this fog of war, where right before they start playing fully into their conference schedule. So week 4, we'll give our updated under review top 25. Now, the playoff prediction. Who will make it? That's the real question. Now, this is my playoff prediction. So I'm going to try and do this the best I can. I'm going to go round by round. I'm going to have it up here on the screen if you are watching on YouTube or Spotify video, so you'll be able to follow along. And if you don't, you can, and you're listening on podcast, we'll have this up on the Instagram as well. So our number 12 team is going to be UNLV. They're going to make it. They are going to be the number 12 seed playing the number 5 seed Ohio State. UNLV is going to get destroyed and by Ohio State, and Ohio State's going to move on, and they are going to play Notre Dame. That's going to be 5-4. And Ohio State is going to beat Notre Dame, I believe. Again, I just think Notre Dame's kind of slow-paced offensive style is going to get blown up by Ohio State once again. So that gets them, Ohio State, to the Final Four and into the semifinals. So now I'm going to go to a different one, and then once we get all of the semifinal games set, then we will go over the semifinals, national champion. And then 9 is going to be Illinois playing number 8, Miami. And Miami is going to just be a better team than Illinois. Illinois making the playoff is going to be big for them, but I think them going all the way to down to Miami and facing this Carson Beck team, I think Mario Cristobal is finally going to see success in his first appearance in the playoffs. And even though Illinois will lose, I think they will still be happy with them making the playoff. And then Miami, number 8 seed Miami will play number 1 seed Texas. Texas is going to overpower Miami, though I think it will be a lot closer than people think. So Texas will make the semifinals. And then you have number 10, Arizona State, play number 7, Georgia. Georgia is going to win that game. And so the number 7 seed Georgia will then go on to play the number 2 seed Penn State. So Penn State is going to beat Georgia only because this team is better than Georgia overall, in my opinion, barely. And we'll kind of see James Franklin get over that big hump against an SEC team, and will give them a lot of false confidence. So Penn State is going to make it into the semifinals as the number 2 seed. And then we've got this kind of bottom. And at number 11, I've got Alabama inside. I think this year the SEC gets 4 teams in, not the Big Ten. That is the difference between last year's playoff and this year's playoff. Alabama, I think, makes it in at 11 and plays LSU. And pretty controversial. I think they're going to beat LSU. I think it's just going to be Brian Kelly choking and just being Brian Kelly and losing a game that they were ahead the majority of. And then number 11 seed Alabama is going to play number 3 seed Clemson. I think Clemson is going to do some crazy stuff and beat Alabama. Dabo's done it before. He's also done some illegal pick plays for touchdowns to win a national championship, but that's here or there. I think that Clemson is going to beat Alabama as a number 3 seed and make the semifinals. And so then we have Texas against Ohio State. Another rematch between these two. I think Texas is going to win this matchup, and they are going to make the national championship game. And then we are going to have Penn State against Clemson. Number 3 seed Clemson is going to upset Penn State as James Franklin chokes yet again in these big games. And so that gives us our national championship game. Texas against Clemson. I think Texas is ultimately going to come out on top and win. And I think that it might be, I think we're going to have a Texas-Clemson national championship where it was like the 2019 national championship against LSU and Clemson, where it was kind of a close game, but you kind of knew that LSU was ahead the whole time and they just turned it on at the end. And I think that's what Texas is going to do, ultimately winning the national championship behind Heisman winning quarterback Arch Manning, your SEC champions as well. So this wraps up our full predictions for the 2025-26 college football season. So now that we've finished that, I've got a few updates for y'all. Dealing with our Instagram account, if you aren't following it, then first I will put a link in the description of the video, and you can follow it if you want to. I think you definitely should. We will be unveiling every Sunday on Instagram, as I would like to put it, as the Under Review newsletter that recaps what we did on the show and presents our content in a dynamic way that kind of gives the feeling of a magazine. And this is a lot of fun, and I think it is going to be really appealing to the eye. So that way you don't have to watch the show again if you wanted to find something. You can look at everything on the Instagram every Sunday, posting our newsletter that will give you all the kind of cliff notes of the show. And what you will probably have noticed by now in our Instagram and slowly seeping into the show is a new graphic style that has been an ongoing work outside of the show that should be more appealing. And once fully developed for Instagram, the graphics are transitioning to the show. We are halfway kind of doing that right now. So by week 1, you should see the show look a little different, but nothing too different. It's going to be the same. And now the show, when we hit week 1, I'm going to give a shorter video, not a full episode this coming Thursday, but on Thursday nights, we are going to give you another show. What? Yeah, I know. You're welcome. We're going to have 2 shows a week now when week 1 hits. We are going to have a Thursday preview show. Going to give you times, our previews for all the shows, and our opinions going into this week and what we could possibly see. And we're going to come up with some new topics and maybe new segments. I don't know. Just be ready. But this upcoming Thursday, we are going to do kind of just a 15-minute short little preview for Farmageddon, the Dublin to Ireland game, and some other topics kind of dealing with Lee Corso. I can't believe this is not going to be his last one, but week 1 will. But I still want to talk about Lee Corso and his impact on college football. And with next week coming Labor Day weekend, just a heads up, we will be doing for week 1, that Thursday will either be Thursday night or Friday morning. In the main show, you can expect it to be kind of later in the day on Sunday or Monday morning, since it is Labor Day weekend. Now, it's been a long time coming, but college football is here, baby. Shum on with your bad self. It's time for some college football. I want to thank all of you for watching, and I'll see you next time when we take more college football under review.